Welcome to Flyover Frequencies, where Midwest skies meet the people who keep aviation moving. From hangars to flight decks, classrooms to control towers, and amateurs to pros, we share stories, experiences, and practical insights from the heart of Midwest aviation.
Welcome back to Flyover Frequencies. Today we're joined by Kyle and Katie, a husband and wife duo who fly as corporate pilots in Southeast Iowa. They also manage the airport in their hometown. Kyle and Katie have a commitment to making flyover country better through the use of aviation. In fact, they met because of their previous jobs in aviation. We hope you enjoy their story as much as we do. Kyle, Katie, welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourselves and give listeners a snapshot of your aviation journey?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
I'm Kyle Shawver. I grew up in Knoxville, Iowa, just southeast of Des Moines, right here in the heartland. I loved airplanes as a little kid. My parents told me that when I was a kid, they'd buy me tractors. We were a farm family. My mom was a homemaker. They'd buy me tractors as a little kid, and I'd fly them around the room because I liked airplanes. But I'd never been in an airplane, never even been around an airplane. But the airport was something we'd pass on the way to town to go to school and so forth. And I just had a love for it from the early age. I didn't know why. Well, it's probably, I was in 5th or 6th grade. We had to go to work with your parent day, and I didn't like school, and so I was going to stay home on the farm. And the teacher didn't allow that, and so my dad thought, well, let's go to the airport. We've never actually stopped in there. So we stopped into the airport, and I got to see a few airplanes and ask 1,000 questions, I'm sure. And it came to find out that the airport manager at the time was Tim McClung, our coattail relative that I'd never actually met. My dad didn't know, but we were related to the same people. And over the course of the next year or two, I'd go out to the airport once a week while my sisters took piano lessons after I had taken my piano lesson that mom thought was broadening our horizons. Anyway, hated that. But anyway, got to go to the airport for an hour once a week, and I'd sit and read magazines and look out the window at the airplanes. And Tim was like, well, can you do something to earn something? And so he started me mowing grass. And so I started mowing grass at the airport when I was 13 or 14. And it took 6 hours to mow the airport in a walk-behind lawnmower, and I was getting $5 an hour for that. The airplane rented for $45 an hour, and the instructor was $15 an hour for $172. And so every 2 weeks, from starting at age, I think 14, I was earned an hour of flight lesson. And so the first summer I got, 6 or 7 hours. The next summer I got 6 or 7 hours. By the time the third summer rolled around, I had almost 20 hours when I turned 16, and still probably wasn't good enough to solo. And so it took a little longer than that, but finally soloed. And when I was 16, mowing grass at the Knoxville airport, and now 32, whatever years later, I'm mowing grass at the airport and still love flying.
Nice.
And so that was kind of how I got into it. And then I wandered into college for some aviation stuff. So that's just a brief snapshot of when I was young. We'll get into the professional stuff, I suppose, a little bit later, but that's my history towards my commercial. So
that's a great start. I mean, most kids are just learning how to drive while you're learning how to fly.
Yeah.
Getting their driver's license at 16, you're getting your first solo at 16. That's awesome.
School prom was going on. I didn't have a date anyway, but I was doing touch and goes during the school prom, which was right off the end of the runway. And so I was coming into land. I was looking down at all the losers on the ground. Anyway,
You had a date with the airplane instead.
That's right.
Katie, you didn't grow up in flyover country, if I'm right.
I did not. So my name is Katie, and my aviation journey began 21 years ago when I earned my pilot's license in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that's where I was born and raised. I attended a specialized aviation high school, which is pretty unique to Las Vegas, where you study all 4 years and just the aviation of history, the aeronautics, and all sorts of stuff. But your senior year, you get to fly. So I did receive my pilot's license at the age of 17. But it was that school that really paved the way to pursue my flying seriously. So over the years, my career has included corporate aviation, where I've attained 8 type ratings, as well as time as overseas as a civilian contractor in Iraq. And today I fly for a corporate company based in Des Moines, Iowa.
Katie, were you flying ISR overseas?
I was, yep.
Wow. So for the listeners who don't know, ISR is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Pretty awesome.
Katie, can you talk a little bit more about your aviation high school? I think that's something that I have not experienced a whole lot of in my journeys. And I think that is something that maybe some people might find interesting and as a way to get started in aviation?
Yeah, so in Las Vegas, they call them magnet programs. So for in the aviation magnet program, it's a 4-year program where you take extra classes every year, and they're all designed to go more in depth into aviation, whether that's the history of aviation. Well, they also have an aviation club, which I was the president, naturally.
Nice.
But it really just builds the enthusiasm and the commitment to aviation. And so, and then senior year, that class is involved with taking your written knowledge test as well as flying. So while most kids were in school, we were at the airport. And the school actually did pay for half the license back then. It was about $5,000 or $6,000 to get your license. And so once you soloed, the school actually funded generally the rest of your flying. So it was a really unique opportunity. And I'm not certain of any other city that offers these magnet programs.
It's really interesting. Yeah. So you did actually get to fly while in high school through this program. It wasn't just a exposure course. You actually got to work on your rating
Yes.
just to private. Is that how that worked?
Yep. Yep. Just your private.
And that was the North Las Vegas airport, right, Katie?
Yep.
So
VG.
it was right there in the midst of all the Class
Wow.
B and everything. So it wasn't just some outlier.
Nice.
It's
Yeah, I
not
guess
small town Iowa flying.
we've heard about more and more of these high school age programs that are starting up. It's nice to know that there are those programs out there that kids can get involved with, get started early.
Yeah, for sure. Then, as you guys progressed through your training, you both decided that you wanted to pursue careers in corporate. Is that correct? Corporate aviation.
Yeah, I had the opportunity after when I was mowing the grass at the airport. There was a manager here named Randy Annette. At the time, he was flying for TMC Trucking Company out of Des Moines, and I was allowed to go along on a few of those trips. And so, as a kid from Iowa, not being anywhere, I think the first trip we went on was out to Winston-Salem, South Carolina, and I was still just in high school, and got to see the world in a sense. In my world, that was pretty small, and so getting to travel around a little bit like that, I was like, this is what I want to do. I got to meet some people at the airlines over the years, but corporate was, I had the desire to explore. And so getting to fly corporate, we'd fly someplace and spend some time, and I get to experience some things and then come back. And so corporate was the direction I chose, and I've actually pushed a lot of people into that direction.
Very good. Katie, how about you? You spent some time overseas, did your government contract work, decided that corporate aviation was the route for you.
Yeah, my background is corporate prior to that. Growing up in Las Vegas, the Thunderbirds are also based there, and so I was actually quite memorized by them and really the military at large. So when I was either 27 or 28, now I had an opportunity to apply directly to the Guard in Reno. I went to college in Reno, and so I tested through, got approved for the board, and I had just turned 28 and aged out of that opportunity. So I then obviously just went into corporate and then my brother, he's a Russian linguist, and he was on the back of the birds I used to fly ISR for. And so he exposed that opportunity. And then I went on to fly for that company. But it it was really God's hand in that because I got to serve at the capacity that I served as a civilian. And so my biggest thing was getting deployed, and I loved that job. And it's kind of unique how I ended up in Des Moines flying corporate here because I initially flew for years in California for corporate, and it's quite challenging to kind of get intertwined with corporate aviation. You have
Yeah,
to know somebody. It's a small world. And so I was deeply intertwined in California, and I wasn't going to try to do it again in Iowa. And so I was going to go fly UPS and cargo or do something. I wasn't quite sure, and had a unique opportunity to find a department here in Iowa. So it was definitely God's hand in that. But
that's cool.
I love corporation. That's where my heart and soul is in corporation in corporate.
Yeah. And in the intro, we said you guys met because of aviation. Can you share with us how that all happened?
Well, I'll tell the story because Katie will tell it differently.
Here we go.
But anyway, the company that I worked for when I was a colleague with Andrew, our principal passenger had a house out in Lake Tahoe, and we would spend most of our summers in the Lake Tahoe area and loved that area. It was a lot of fun. Well, I ended up hauling a motorcycle out there in the back of the airplane once. And so I had a motorcycle, which we had lots of time. There's lots of places to ride out there. We were on a trip during the summer, and I was with one of my other colleagues, not Andrew, and we were sitting in the terminal building, and this girl, this blonde girl, come walking in, quite pretty. Anyway, I got my attention, so and my colleague, he was talking to her, and she was the one in charge of the noise abatement procedures or the community relations with the airport. And so anyway, he was stopping to talk to her for a minute about some of the stuff that they had had a meeting with. She was talking about being a pilot and having been from Las Vegas. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Well, anyway, a few months go by. I didn't see her again then. I had a trip with another colleague. Actually, we were leaving Des Moines to go to Las Vegas on a trip, and we had passengers leaving to go to Truckee. This was over Christmas or during Christmas time, and their airplane broke. And so it was a NetJet's going to haul them out. And so those people ended up getting on our flight. We flew to Las Vegas, dropped off the people there, and then flew on up to Truckee. And so the timing of us being through Las Vegas and there, I was like, I'm going to go find that pretty blonde girl and talk to her. We landed. It was just a quick turn. I go inside and I'm looking around, find her. I was like, hey, it's me. We're going to go to Las Vegas. You're from there. You want to hop in the airplane and go? She's like, who are you? And so she's like, well, come out here in the hallway for a minute. And got to talking for a minute. I told her that company I was with. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know who you guys are.
So we ring the bell every time we come in and make the noise and make the neighbors mad, right? That's why you were doing that every time. Now it all makes sense.
Let's go have a conference with the noise lady. Anyway, so we got to stand there talking just a little bit, and I was like trying to impress her by telling her that I had a motorcycle out there, and she scoffed. She goes, I've got a Harley. She basically asked me out at that moment. That was kind of the initial how we met that afternoon. She had a Cessna or rented a Cessna, and we went flying over the mountains over to Columbia, California, and walked around this historic downtown and back. And man, I was in love. She didn't know my middle name yet, but that's how it started. I was trying, but that's how we originally met.
And you had a unique wedding ceremony, Katie. Am I correct?
Yes. We got married, and so over those summers when Kyle would come into town, we would rent a Cirrus, and so we flew all over the state of California in this Cirrus. And so before I was deploying, it was actually 2 days before I deployed. He came to California. We got in the Cirrus and we flew over Lake Tahoe in the shape of a heart. And the gentleman who married us was a mutual friend. He got his license to ordain, and so he's also a pilot. And so he flew the Cirrus while he married us with my
Nice.
best friend in the right seat as a witness. It was
Nice.
quite beautiful and obviously a unique.
Yeah,
That's
that is
awesome.
unique.
Yeah.
But it's funny too because Kyle he never really had any girlfriends. And so
What?
he would tell people that he was dating this girl out in California and nobody believed him. And all of a sudden now he's married and I was deployed in Iraq and he says, "Well, now I'm married." And they were like, "Well, where's your wife?" "Well, she's in Iraq."
You're the imaginary girl that he doesn't know the name of that's out
Yeah.
in California and Nevada. And conveniently now she's in Iraq. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
COVID hit at that time, and so she was supposed to be gone. I think just a short turn, and ended up being gone for 3 or 4 months almost. And so there was no quick way of proving that I was married. There were a lot of people she met when she came back, and the comment was, "Oh, you're real." We really didn't believe Kyle. You're real. Wow. Okay.
I think it was everybody I met, actually.
Yeah, I think it was.
So that's how you found your way to Iowa and found your job in corporate aviation, Katie. What's a typical day look like as a corporate pilot for you?
Well, I work for a corporation that uses the aircraft for business only, so we don't fly any personal trips. And they use the aircraft quite conservatively, which makes me kind of just a 9 to 5 job. So my corporate role is quite different than Kyle's, in the fact that he flies a lot of personal trips, which puts him in the Bahamas and all over the place.
So Kyle, yours is more unique.
Well, it's a little bit different. It's a Midwestern company that they're a nutritional healthcare company. And they manufacture meals that are delivered around the country to people for healthcare, Medicaid. And so I actually get like 3 paychecks. I get one paycheck from that company, one paycheck from the gentleman that was the founder that owns the airplanes that I fly, because I fly for him as well, and then his son is also a part owner. So two of those are basically all personal flying, and then one of them is for the company is typical corporate flying like Katie does, where we leave at 7 in the morning, go to a place, set for the day, come back at 5 at night. And that's pretty typical. But the founder lives in the Bahamas, and so I'll start a day off in the jet. We have a fly a Pilatus PC-24, leave Bankany with them on board or some of their friends. We'll fly down there, drop it off, spend a few hours, and then fly back empty and go back a week later. And so there's things like that. We also fly a PC-12, and we'll do a round trip flight in the PC-12 to the Bahamas all in one day. We'll leave at 7 in the morning. It takes 5 hours to get there. You can do it nonstop and drop passengers off, turn around, come back, clear customs stateside somewhere, and then all the way back home. And it's about it ends up being a 10-hour day roughly of flying alone.
And you
Those
do
are the
all
days I
that
get.
with single pilot?
All of it's single pilot. Yep. All my
Yeah.
flying is single pilot. So it varies some, but a lot of the trips, Chicago is a really common place with one passenger, drop off, come back. And so that's one thing unique about it is that I get to come home often.
Nice.
Kyle, can you talk a little bit more about the differences in your experience of crew corporate aircraft versus single pilot?
So when you're working as a crew, which was most of my career, you really can kind of balance the workload out between the two of you. You have one pilot that's going to do all the flying, and then the other guy, the pilot beside you, is also a pilot. He's going to be doing not the navigation, but a lot of the radio communication and so forth. Running the checklist is really your second set of eyes for everything, and in a sense, a sounding board. Like here's what we're going to do. Yep, they agree. But in flight, during the middle of the flight, with a crew, you're both just kind of sitting there telling stories. I miss the crew environment. We go into Las Vegas and Washington Dulles and some of these bigger airports, and it's a challenge when you get on the ground to keep up with all of the frequency changes, taxiway changes, and so forth, to do it efficiently. Because when you're with a crew, one guy can just kind of keep rolling, the other guy's head down, trying to figure out where we're going and give you some information that way. When you're by yourself, it's challenging to do that. It can be unsafe to not just stop and figure out what's going on. Working as a crew is a pretty significant thing. Now, being single pilot, you have to just do all of that yourself. There's not a second person there to question, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You just make the decision and you do it. So single pilot has a lot of benefits in the sense you don't have to listen to anybody you don't want to listen to, but it's I miss flying as a crew sometimes. There's a lot of good things about both ways.
I think just for listeners that might not know the difference in what we mean by single pilot, I just thought, talking about the challenges of flying as a single pilot versus a crew, I think, a lot of people might think that aviation is just airlines and working next to another pilot all the time, and there's always somebody there to back you up. It's definitely a unique situation that you're flying and you're the sole responsibility, and that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. You guys have unique roles, or obviously very different roles in corporate aviation. What are some of the misconceptions that you see about corporate aviation?
I would say one of the big misconceptions is that corporate aviation is glamorous or always exciting. I think in reality, while it's a rewarding career, it comes with a lot of responsibility, training, and discipline. People often don't realize the level of preparation and behind the scenes work it takes to make a trip look seamless. Corporate pilots are responsible for not just the safety of flight, but they're also responsible for catering, rental cars, making captain decisions. Whereas in the airlines, you have a dispatch who's deciding whether you take the flight or not. Corporate aviation, it really is the captain that's signing for the aircraft and making all of those decisions. So I think it's just a more so responsibility that governs that flight.
Yeah, and I would say then I think corporate aviation is more rewarding than being an airline pilot. I know a lot of guys that have been corporate and end up at the airlines. They're like, well, it's so easy. The money's really good. But I think it's just a much more rewarding career than people give it credit for that are sitting on the outside looking in. They want to be an airline pilot because, wow, you're an airline pilot. But I think at the end of the day, I couldn't go do it. I enjoy, that's one thing unique about being a pilot. One thing about aviation and the career of it is that every day you have that reward of the effort that you put in for that day.
Can you talk a little bit about your home and work-life balance? Are you home more? Are you on the road more? I know that airlines have a pretty set schedule that they can manipulate a little bit, but Do you have a better work-life balance, you feel, working in corporate aviation?
I definitely think so for me. The career I had when I was with Andrew, we were gone a lot, spent 150 nights a year on the road. And now, like I said, my owners don't want us being on the road if we don't have to be. They want to get where they want to go, and they own an airplane to do that. And so we get them there and we get to come back. And that's one thing that makes my job really good. And so even if we fly 4 or 5 days a week, about every night I'm home. And usually a couple of those days are just an out drop and come back. A lot of the airline guys look forward to being senior because then they can finally pick their times and get group things together. They're constantly juggling this trip for that trip and trying to maximize their time at home. And I get to be I'm at home and get to go to my job for a little bit and then come back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that'll fall into the conversation next about what we do now running the airport, because in a sense, now we have two jobs.
Yeah. How did you end up managing the airport in small town, southeast Iowa?
Well, I'd mowed the grass here since I was a little kid and learned to fly here. And so I had a passion for this airport and for aviation in general. And when the manager who'd been here a long time secretly told me that he was thinking about moving on, I was like, well, if we don't do it, who will? And it kind of gave us a platform then to do something with our spare time or free time, in a sense that's meaningful, more so than just sitting at home. And so we signed up for it, and then it's been kind of a whirlwind ever since, because instead of just maintaining the status quo, we're really trying to promote aviation. We're working to make it a successful business, but more importantly, to promote aviation.
One of our objectives on this podcast is to talk about all the different ways people can be involved in aviation. And you mentioned you manage the airport, but what does that entail? Like, how does someone go about learning how to manage an airport? And then what does the day-to-day management look like?
Well, just in brief, so Katie and I, as the team we are, when we started up for this, the airport had a requirement. They needed a manager that was a contract employee for the city, and that manager had to provide an FBO, a fixed base operator service. And so what we did was buy out the previous guy's FBO. And so I run and manage the FBO portion of it. And Katie is actually named as the Knoxville city manager. And so I'll let her visit about that.
So for from the airport perspective, and so previously when we took over, the gentleman that had it before, he did both roles. And so for us, there's two of us. And so I think that we're able to do a more conceptual job kind of overseeing the airport. And so from a management perspective, I work directly with the city from a funding perspective, from an FAA perspective, from a DOT perspective. And so it's my job to oversee all the functions of the airport and make sure that we're obeying the guidelines provided by the FAA, that that the aircraft or the airport is maintained to not just FAA standards, but to DOT standards. I write grants. So the airport is funded primarily by the FAA and the DOT, but to be approved for these grants that I apply for, there's guidance that we have to be in accordance with. And so it's my job for that oversight, essentially. And I handle all the tenants, the maintenance, might do some of the maintenance, all of it. But so it's my job really for that. And then all of our airport improvement funding, all of those projects, it takes a great deal of responsibility really to oversight all that paperwork and stuff like that.
And so you don't have to be a pilot to be an airport manager. That can be a standalone, separate career, correct?
Yes, yep. And so with my background, especially in Truckee, I do have airport experience, but being a pilot, I think offers an entire different enhancement to my role as an airport manager because, I understand how pilots fly, why they fly. I actually just received a phone call from the airport about the skydiving airplane flying too low. It's a full understanding of why airplanes operate the way that they do, why they do, and when they do. And so, no, not directly, but I do have the experience. I think that has proven to be valuable in my role there at the airport.
What would you say, Katie, what in your past experience helps you the most? Is it your experience that you had from Truckee, or did you study anything? Do you have a degree in anything or certification prior to taking on this management role? What would be a good pathway that you would think to become an airport manager?
I would say that so I do have my bachelor's and my master's actually in business administration. And so I do have from an educational perspective, a great depth of knowledge of management. But Truckee, just being so involved with the airport there in my role, learning the ins and outs, and I worked really closely with the airport manager and the city. It was my role to work directly with the community who had no experience of airplanes. They just hated the airplanes. And so it was my job to not just provide an educational perspective, but also create a relationship with the public. As pilots, we say, well, this is why airplanes fly, but the public has no idea. And a lot of times people complain or they're unsure because they're scared. Like the phone call I just described, it was an airplane that was flying too low and it scared him. And that's why I think that my previous role has allowed me to articulate why things are happening. And I think that educational part is key, but it's my experience working with the public that has made that relationship more seamless.
Just for people that are interested in maybe pursuing something like that, I think it's good to know how to get that experience and what has helped you along that journey to get there. So thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about all the opportunities that Kyle had of mowing the grass. I mean, from a small town airport in Iowa to flying to the Bahamas regularly. I mean, there's opportunities everywhere. And, we're kind of moving on to the management side. Katie, could you talk a little bit more? I want to go back to your ISR time. Could you expound on that a little bit and tell us what that was like?
So ISR is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. We fell under the DoD, the Department of Defense, and it's kind of a unique opportunity. And like I had mentioned previously, it was my brother that kind of exposed me to that opportunity and got me connected to the company. And so originally, when my contract started, we were flying specifically for the Air Force, and then it kind of expanded into Joint Task Force. But really, the role was designed to gather intel for the military. I found it really rewarding. So I really enjoyed my time there. And if it wasn't for, being introduced to the company I work for today, I would probably, I think Kyle would have put an end to me deploying. But I really did love the work that we did.
Did you ever turn the news on at night and we're like, yep, I took a part of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a different perspective.
For the listeners who don't know, you were flying a turboprop airplane over Iraq as a civilian, and these airplanes have really advanced cameras and different sensors on them. And do you just collect video and imagery intel, or is there signals intelligence as well?
Yes. So some of the aircraft we flew had all three. So we could listen, we could see people's cell phones, SIM cards. But it's kind of interesting because when you're on station, essentially when you are watching what you're supposed to be doing, I suppose I'm not quite sure how far I want to dive into it. Once you're on station, you're no longer a pilot, you're a sensor operator. And so the cameras that are on board, um, you you watch. And so there's big monitors in the cockpit that then come out and you are part of the crew. It is the most crew environment I've ever flown in. And just to give an example, when we're on an operation and we all are in correlation with each other. So as a pilot, you're now a sensor operator. And as a sensor operator, you have the responsibility of correlation during an op. And I'll let you think about what that means.
Sure. Yeah.
But that was interesting. And then also, so from a CRM perspective, career resource management, it was the guys in the back who also were part of the crew. And I'll give an example. In Al Asad, they had parallel runways, and we're flying at night, and we are required to wear night vision goggles. And there was a US that was flying on the parallel. And so we're both coming in. Well, at 90 nautical miles, there's a satellite on the ground that is controlling those UASs, and it had a data loss signal. And so what was programmed into that UAS was the right. And I was on short final for the right runway. Coming in, well, then he starts coming over. Well, we have our cameras on the bottom of the aircraft, the sensor operators watching them until they're stowed. And he's coming towards me. Well, I don't see him. And the guy in the back, this is actually, there's two really important things. In aviation, we say words mean something. One guy yells, "Go up, go up." Well, in aviation, what does that mean? And so I'm confused, and the other guy issues a go around, go around, go around. So I initiate a go around, and at that time, I mean, we would have collided. And so it was a incredible demonstration of crew resource management. And so on that aircraft, I like to tell that story because it is a significant, CRM story, and obviously now
Yeah.
they're always pressing it in today's world. But it was kind of neat that it was military personnel that we generally flew um, on board, but it was a good lesson for words do mean something, um, because going up on short final doesn't mean as much as go around.
That's interesting too. We have a lot of standardized call outs in aviation from different aircraft to have different call outs, but there are some that are pretty standard. Yeah. But what is the standard call out for you're about to collide with a UAS below you?
Yeah.
You can't spit all
Took
that
too
out of your
long.
mouth when you see that thing that's right there on your camera. That's a good example.
Get out of here. Go around would be much more appropriate.
That's okay. Are those jobs still available? If anyone's still interested in pursuing that, could a pilot apply and become an ISR operator for a company?
Yeah, yeah, and they fly. I mean, they're still. I think that they're obviously out of Afghanistan, because our company was there as well. But I know that we're still in Africa, and there's opportunities to go to Dubai and Italy. I mean, there really are a truly international company.
Well, very cool. I know we kind of digressed. Andrew, you want to take us back to managing a small airport?
Back to managing a small airport. What does a small airport contribute to a local economy?
Well, actually, a couple years ago, Iowa DOT issued a economic impact for the Knoxville airport, and it contributes $3 million annually. But beyond dollars, our airport supports emergency services such as Flight for Life, military operations, and also surrounding businesses. So it's far more than a place just for recreational pilots. It's a vital part of the community.
People can recognize Knoxville for we're the sprint car capital of the world. And so we have race car drivers, we have sponsors, we have enthusiasts that come in from all around the Midwest to Knoxville to come watch the races all summer long. It makes a pretty significant impact. We're right across the street from a large corporation that builds paving equipment, and people will come in to visit with them, come in to see their equipment. Because we have the airport here, I think is a large reason that that facility is right across the street from us.
Have you seen the Knoxville airport grow under your leadership?
Well, our flight school went from basically not having a flight school to our instructor has, I believe, like 13 students right now. It's a little overwhelming for him, and so for the economic impact of that, that's to be determined. That's going to grow in the future because people that learn to fly and buy airplanes and then can utilize those for business makes a big difference. But our flight school has gone from no flight school essentially to a pretty thriving one. We've actually added a helicopter to our fleet of aircraft. They're going to do some training and support that as well. And so that's just the flight training side of it with our airport. With
Seaplane training in the
the
near
seaplane
future?
training, yeah, some specialized things, everything that's fun, we've tried to do because it's fun. And so we're right here by the big lake, Red Rock, and, have offered seaplane training in the past and plan to do that in the future. And so aviation is unique in that you do it because it's fun, but it's also such an incredible tool that people that get into business realize and they can utilize that. So all the people that use it for, not all people, but a lot of people that use it for business do so just for business and the time savings of it. But it's unique in the sense that it's so much fun as well.
I think that's awesome because it used to be really common for a small airport to have a flight school around, and then that's kind of went away, and you're bringing it back. And so a lot of these airports, small town airports, if there's not flight training there, someone who's interested might have to drive quite a while to get to a flight school.
Yeah, and to follow back up with kind of what you were talking about earlier, when we took over the airport, one of the things was to promote aviation, but also the opportunity that I had. So even though I mow the grass occasionally around the airport, we have young people high school age kids, early college kids that come back and spend the summers helping mow grass, do a lot of the airport upkeep and different things in exchange for flying lessons. And so that's one of the things that we're proud of, that we continually promote. Like there's a young man that's doing it right now, and next year it'll be somebody different. And we have 4 or 5, 6, 7, everyone. We have a bunch of people that are 20 and under that we're trying to provide opportunities for and pathways for.
Good for you
That's
guys.
a great program. Yeah.
Good for you guys. What makes flying in the Midwest unique?
The lack of controlled airspace. It's wonderful. We live on the grass strip just south of town, and we can take off, fly from the house around the lake, come back and land, not talk to anybody. Don't have to do that. Don't have to worry about flying everybody's house too low. You can fly at 200 or 300 feet. It's safe to do, and never go over any person, vessel, or structure, and just have a nice evening out flying around. You can smell the corn during pollination. You can smell the fresh cut hay, the grass. It's just, I love it. I love the
Very
ruralness of it.
Midwest.
Yeah.
That's hard to say about Southern California. I can say from experience, and I'm sure Katie can too. But you can't do that in Southern California.
No,
Probably a
it's
difference
kind of
now.
interesting because I think the general aviation community is quite larger in California, but the freedom in the Midwest is far greater. So it's kind of interesting. And my birthday was a couple weeks ago. Iowa offers, I guess we said that was up in Minnesota. What was the place called? Brainerd?
Madden's on Gull Lake.
Yeah, Madden's. But it was really unique. So we fly, our personal aircraft, never talk to anybody, land on a grass strip 2.5 hours later, to a beautiful resort just situated on the lake. And I mean, there's such a freedom in flight, in particular prior to ADSB, but it's certainly to be enjoyed, I think, here in the Midwest.
But also, what's unique to the Midwest, everybody's like, yeah, this is flyover country, but it's right in the middle of everything. As pilots, if you want to go wherever you want to go, you're kind of in the middle of all of it. If you have something like a Bonanza, you're half a day flight to Florida, you're half a day flight to the East Coast, you're half a day flight to fishing in Canada, you're half a day flight or fuller day flight to the West Coast, if you want to go there. But there's a lot to explore, and you're kind of right in the middle of it all here. It's
And
really,
you wouldn't necessarily have those opportunities if you weren't a pilot. So getting your pilot certificate and renting a plane or joining a flying
sure.
club, it really opens up where you and your family can go, the things you can do on a weekend.
Yep.
For
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, and so Katie just mentioned her birthday. Every year we do something on her birthday. We fly somewhere. And actually, a year ago for work, we got to go to the Hamptons, out in New York. And so it was a work trip, and she got to go along. And here we head to the Hamptons, and we're like, well, this is nice, but it's just a nice, quiet place, kind of like the Midwest, kind of like home is. And so it's eye opening that away too. But we've also, like, for her birthday, we flew a couple years ago up to Madeline Island. There's just such unique things you can do as a pilot and explore.
Yeah.
Nice.
What's something you wish more people knew about careers in aviation?
That it's worth the work. It's expensive, and it's a lot of work to go from a student pilot to a marketable commercial pilot. That's a long road, but it's so worth it. It's fun along the way, but it's also stressful. Every check ride, I've never had a check ride that wasn't stressful. All the work and all the money you spend is worth it on the other end, even when it's not fun, even when you're stressed about different things. It's worth the journey.
Katie?
I would actually mimic just that. I think that when, like, particularly, young students start off on this career path, I don't think that there is an understanding of just how hard it is. But you have the public's interest in the palm of your hands. It should be. And I think that that's why that there is so much commitment and dedication that's required to be a professional pilot. There's a large amount of accountability, responsibility, and it's important to note that throughout the career path. And I just my went through initial, and it is interesting after all these years of going to flight school and initials and recurrence. I think there is still a high level of stress that's involved, and there very much should be, because we have serious jobs. And when the public trusts you, you are held to a different standard. And I think that that's recognized in our careers.
And good for you guys for promoting that and having, for lack of better terms, a mentorship for young people that want to get into the careers like this, that you guys come alongside of them and help them with the experience and still go back to grassroots things like mowing the airport property and allowing people to have the opportunity to do that. I think that's unique in where we live and how we pursue that. So good for you guys for doing that. What would you say has kept you passionate about flying? What keeps you going?
Learning new things, you know, and that's what we try to promote. Like just recently, like it was talked earlier about the helicopter thing, and I just love the tail wheel, the country flying. But it's fun when we get to do new challenges. That's one thing that keeps it unique, makes it keeps a passion for it, I suppose. But again, just having fun, doing something different. When you know it can get kind of stale doing touch and goes in the pattern, so go someplace else. Go do a new thing. Go fly somewhere. Go get $100 hamburger as they call it. Fly someplace for lunch. Fly someplace to a fly in and just there's a community in aviation as well. That's not just at your local airport, but EAA Air Venture they do a great job. You know, Sun and Fun bring all these people together and promote aviation and all of the diverseness that there is within it.
Yeah. Go do your seaplane add-on or something.
There you go.
Let's go see Kyle.
Helicopter rating.
Yeah. How about you, Katie?
Um, I mean, virtually the same. I think that's, as Kyle discussed, it's a combination of challenge and freedom. I mean, no two flights are the same. And, we have a unique opportunity to fly so many different types of aircraft, whether that's, we can fly, jets for our jobs and come home and fly a Taylor craft where we're a helicopter now.
Yeah.
But it creates such a diversity in aviation and really keeps that excitement which I think lends to the passion of aviation. And so our hearts and souls just really go into not only just our corporate jobs, but into the airport, into our students that, and we provide scholarship opportunities for quite a few students now. And that isn't really our corporate jobs, I think, that are funneling that. But these
But good for
kids
you for giving back.
individual yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, but the industry is going to benefit from that, and these kids individually, without that help would never have the opportunity to get their pilot's license. And now 2 or 3 of them are now working on their commercials. And so it's so gratifying to be the hand in that, to change these kids' life for the better, and in aviation at large.
You guys said that earlier, like aviation is about connection. And so connecting people that might not have those opportunities to have the opportunity and to do something they never thought would be possible. So good for you guys.
I would love to have known Katie and Kyle
Right.
when I was growing up and
Yeah.
be able to connect with them and learn from what they've done and what they've created and the programs and the help that they're providing to their local community. What a great couple.
We had a young man when we first took over the airport that was a mutual friend that was in high school, didn't know his family was all of really smart people, doctors and so forth. And he was just kind of floundering in a sense. And this fellow brought him to the airport and said, I want to help him get started with flight training and so forth. And he can, work around the airport a little bit. That was 2.5 years ago, I think, when we took over. He has almost 500 hours of flying time now. He's ready to take his commercial check ride, his instrument rating. But in exchange for working around the airport, I've actually added him to the Taylor craft. So he can fly the Taylor craft. And so a couple hundred of those hours are in the Taylor craft. And he comes to my house at 6:30 in the morning, gets the Taylor craft out, flies it to Ottumwa to go to school, and then flies it back in the afternoon, puts it away, and drives to the airport to work for a few hours. He just loves that airplane. So it's neat to see that passion, be able to be a part of that passion growing in someone. And he wants to make a career of it, and he's going to. And there's a young lady here that she didn't have any opportunities in aviation, has been here, and she as well is getting ready to take her commercial pilot's license.
So there's a young man that takes an airplane and he flies it to school.
Something
It's
pretty
unique.
unique in this.
Yeah.
Flies it to A&P school. Yeah.
Where can listeners learn more about your airport and connect with you?
Katie?
So our website is knoxaviation.com. So we have a website where you can reach us directly through there through a contact form. And we're also on Facebook, which we post, obviously, when we celebrate our students, we're the most excited about, I think. But Knoxville Aviation, it's just a Facebook group on Facebook, and we're on Instagram and now TikTok to try to keep up with the generation. But we obviously we hosted Fly Iowa a couple years ago, and we hope to do that again in the future. to try to obviously grow general aviation. I think it's the events that really grow the passion in aviation. For me, growing up in Las Vegas, I looked to the sky and could watch the Thunderbirds, and that's really where my passion evolved from. So for kids, particularly in a small town, kids grow up knowing what their parents do, what their friends' parents do, and it's important for us to grow and inspire that enthusiasm in general aviation. And with that, it's bringing them to the airport. And so, um, obviously, that's why we did Fly Iowa, and we have a fly-in next week, where it's not just a fly-in, but we try to incorporate the kid-friendly functions as well, because generally, if you can get people to the airport who otherwise would never be there, is a really important responsibility for us. So we have a fall festival. We're going to have hay rides and airplane rides, and there's pumpkin painting and face painting and bouncy houses, and there's a chili cook-off, and it's a chili cook-off for a cause. So we're doing, it's going to support nonprofit and a live band, and it's going to be kind of Oktoberfest themed. The name is OXV Toberfest. Super clever.
Yeah.
That's our identifier. But it's to really capture the community, the Knoxville community, Des Moines metro community, where it brings families to the airport, to really foster that enthusiasm with aviation and be part. And I want the airport to play a larger role in the local community, you know.
And Katie has put together a $5,000 scholarship that has been promoted through the school systems within a 30-mile range of here, encouraging people that are eligible, wanting to become eligible for it, to write an essay about airplanes or aviation or why they would like to become a pilot. And if it works out, we're hoping to announce the winner of that $5,000 scholarship at the fly-in.
And when is that? What date is that?
It's October 4th.
Thanks for that. And for all the listeners, we'll have a link to their Facebook page and all their information, their contact information at the end of our show notes.
Any parting thoughts that you guys would want to share? What about a story?
What, story time?
It's story time.
I don't know which story to tell. I could tell a story about Andrew putting the brakes on real hard with the nose still off the ground at Chicago Midway, which I won't tell that story. One of the funny stories we were talking about, this is when Andrew and I worked together. We used to fly across the Northern Atlantic a few times, and it's a long flight and in the middle of the night, so you do things to try to stay awake. Somebody got the bright idea, I suppose it's Andrew, we'll just name him,
No, it wasn't me.
to make cinnamon rolls, and to bring one of those little twisty cinnamon roll things that you twist and it pops open and makes a noise. Andrew decided to put the cinnamon rolls from his flight bag right into the oven in that roller just to store them in there. And about a little before coast out, feet wet, our passenger gets up to make his dinner, and he just turns the little stove on, a little easy bake oven on there, and we're flying along, and we're just out over the ocean, and you hear this pop, a thump sound. What was that?
It was more than a pop. It was quite startling.
The cockpit filled with a wonderful smell of cinnamon. Well, the oven had warmed up for a while, and pretty soon the passenger came up to put his filet mignon in or whatever it was, and he opened it up, and here's an exploded mushroom cloud of cinnamon rolls. And I don't remember how we got it out of there because it was hot. It was a mess. But
it was a mess.
Yeah,
it also smelled like electrical smoke. That distinct smell of like something's burning after a pop, and you're out over the water. It's pitch black. I don't know about you, but the hair on my neck was like, oh boy, here we go.
I don't have 50 more stories for Andrew, but that's okay.
The planes that we used to fly overseas, there was big servers on board, and they used to get really hot. And so we used to get cookies from the chow hall, and we'd make jokes about putting them in the oven, and that was just sitting them right on top of those servers.
You got your own easy bake oven right there on the airplane. No convection needed.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Kyle and Katie, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today on Flyover Frequencies. We appreciate the insight you've given us into your work as a corporate pilots and airport manager, husband and wife duo. Once again, if you'd like to learn more about the airport that Kyle and Katie manage or visit any of the things they have in their area, you can stop in and see them at OXV, Knoxville Airport, or visit their website. We'll have a link to it at the end of this podcast. Every aviator has a story, and we're just getting started. Catch us on the next episode of Flyover Frequencies. Thanks for listening.